Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, and Somalia. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the 10 elected members of the Security Council, namely Algeria, Greece, Guyana, Pakistan, Panama, the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Somalia, and my own country, Denmark. Mr. President, as elected members, we represent every region of the world. Importantly, we represent the will and the expectations of the members of the General Assembly by whom we were elected. In electing us, they entrusted us with the solemn responsibility to maintain international peace and security. It is in this spirit and with this grave responsibility in mind that we, collectively and resolutely, present today's resolution. Mr. President, famine has been confirmed in Gaza. Not projected, not declared, confirmed. Desperate mothers are forced to boil leaves to feed their children. Fathers search the rubble for sustenance. People are killed as they try to get food to survive. A generation risks being lost not only to war, but to hunger and despair. Meanwhile, Israel has expanded its military operation in Gaza City, further deepening the suffering of civilians as a result. It is this catastrophic situation, this humanitarian and human failure, that has compelled us to act today. Mr. President, today we will take action on an important resolution. It focuses on 3 urgent and immediate demands. Demands that many member states have made time and time again. No more and no less. First, an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza respected by all parties. Second, the immediate, dignified and unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas and other groups. And third, that the government of Israel immediately and unconditionally lifts all restrictions on the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza and ensures its safe and unhindered distribution to the population in need of such assistance in line with international humanitarian law. Mr. President, this is the product of weeks of consultations. The sole intent of this resolution is to ease suffering and contribute to the end of this abhorrent war. So, colleagues, let this resolution send a clear message. A message that the Security Council is not turning its back on starving civilians, on the hostages, and the demand for a ceasefire. Let it say that we support humanitarian workers and health personnel struggling against impossible odds. That when a war is live-streamed around the world, daily and in graphic details, we have the decency to act. That international law matters. That humanitarian principles matter. That the principles of humanity enshrined in the UN Charter guide us. Mr. President, we, the 10 elected members of the Security Council, call on all Council members to vote in favor of this resolution and to uphold this Council's responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, U.S. opposition to this resolution will come as no surprise. It fails to condemn Hamas or recognize Israel's right to defend itself, and it wrongly legitimizes the false narratives benefiting Hamas which have sadly found currency in this Council. Council members ignored when the United States made clear that this resolution was unacceptable. The Council instead adopted for performative action designed to draw a veto that extends Hamas terrorists and those who fund them and support them and gives them a lifeline. Let's recall that Hamas started this brutal conflict on October 7th, 2023, when it perpetrated the worst massacre and kidnapping of Jews since the Holocaust. To the approval of its supporters who took to the streets on October 8th to praise what Hamas had done, Hamas promises to repeat October 7th. Despite everything, Hamas has no regrets. The lives of Gaza's civilians in harm's way are mere tools in the project to destroy Israel. Hamas continues to hold 48 hostages. Those who remain alive are captive in a living hell. It has done so for 713 days. We have seen the chilling videos and images of how Hamas has starved the hostages. In this Council, we have heard heart-rending testimony from freed hostages, how Hamas brutalized and sexually assaulted them during their captivity. Hamas is responsible for starting and continuing this war. Israel has accepted proposed terms that would end the war, but Hamas continues to reject them. This war could end today if Hamas freed the hostages and laid down its arms. This resolution has other serious defects beyond just failing to condemn Hamas. First, the United States has stressed since this conflict began that Israel has the right to defend itself. This resolution seeks an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire that would leave Hamas in a position to carry out future October 7th attacks, as it has threatened to do so many times. This resolution draws a dangerous false equivalence between Israel and Hamas. There can be no equating the two, full stop. The hostages in this resolution are a mere afterthought. The United States will never accept this. President Trump will never accept this. He has made clear all 48 hostages must be released now. This resolution also refuses to acknowledge and seeks to return to a failed system that has allowed Hamas to enrich and strengthen itself at the expense of civilians in need. This resolution wrongly references the IPC report with its flawed methodology, changed standards, and clear bias. Gaza has humanitarian needs because of Hamas, and because the international community turned a blind eye to the true use of the billions in aid that it provided. Israel takes clear risks by working every single day with the United States and regional partners to deliver aid to civilians, as we witnessed today. As Ambassador Huckabee said, initial reports show a terrorist arrived at Albany Crossing, driving an aid truck intended for Gaza, and murdered 2 Israeli soldiers. This heinous act betrays the trust in humanitarian efforts. We offer our condolences to the bereaved IDF families. This resolution fails to recognize the reality on the ground that there has been a meaningful increase in the flow of humanitarian aid. However, the UN's own data shows that approximately 85% of UN aid sent to Gaza since May 19th has been intercepted. We must ensure that this aid reaches the civilians who need it, rather than sustaining the Hamas terrorists. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, supports that goal, delivering over 167 million meals to date to those in need, rather than to Hamas. GHF works well, and it is untainted by the extreme failure of other organizations at the UN. The UN and the Council members should support the GHF and other mechanisms, including airdrops by Jordan, the UAE, and international partners facilitating deliveries of food and other supplies into Gaza. These mechanisms have delivered humanitarian assistance and other goods to those in need and denied Hamas the supply on which they have come to rely. So, the United States rejects this unacceptable resolution. It is beyond time that Hamas release every single hostage now and surrender immediately. The United States will continue to work with its partners to bring an end to this horrific conflict for the sake of the people of Gaza, who deserve a future free from Hamas. and the whole Middle East, which is ready to move into a new chapter of peace and prosperity. For these reasons, the United States of America will vote against the draft resolution and urges delegations to join us in voting against it.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2025/583 please raise their hand. Those against? There's no abstentions. The result of the voting is as follows. 14 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 0 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make a statement after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. I begin my statement today in this 10,000th session of the Security Council with an apology. An apology to the people of Palestine, in particular in Gaza, to those whose eyes are turned to this Council today. We Algerians, we hear you, Palestinian sisters, Palestinian brothers. Forgive us. Forgive us, in particular in Gaza, where fire consumes, where rubble suffocates. Forgive us because this Council could not save your children. More than 18,000 of them have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because this Council could not protect your women. More than 12,000 of them have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because this Council could not shield your elderly. More than 4,000 of them have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because this Council could not defend your doctors, your nurses. More than 1,400 have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because we couldn't defend your journalists. More than 250 have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because we couldn't protect your aid workers. More than 500 of them have been killed by Israel. Forgive us because famine now spreads in Gaza. And this Council could not stop it, could not even act to denounce it, because this Council could not halt your forced displacement, and because aid, humanitarian aid, is turned into a weapon. And this Council, this very Council, could not break the siege of Gaza. Forgive us, because the world speaks of rights, but deny them to you, Palestinians. Forgive us, because our efforts, our sincere efforts, shattered against the wall of rejection. Despite these sincere efforts, this Security Council was not of any help for you. Why? Because Israel is shielded, because it is immune. Immune not by international law, but by the bias of this international system. Israel kills every day, and nothing happens. Israel starves a people, and nothing happens. Israel bombs hospitals, schools, shelters, and nothing happens. Israel attacks a mediator and steps on diplomacy, and nothing happened. And with every act, unpunished, humanity itself is diminished. Colleagues, history will not weigh our speeches. It will weigh our deeds. When Gaza burned, when children starved, when hospitals fell under the bomb, did we act? Yes. Yet know this. Today, 14 courageous members of this Security Council raise their voice. They have acted with conscience, echoing the calls of the international public opinion. Palestinian sisters, Palestinian brothers, be assured, we will not give up. This is not the last time this Council is acting, and the international community must shoulder its duty. President, again, this Council failed. Another scar of the conscience of humanity. Shame. Shame on helplessness. Shame in the face of genocide. Genocide unfolding before open eyes. And to those who still deny read the report. Read the report of the Independent Commission of Inquiry. Its words are clear, and I quote, "The Commission concludes that the State of Israel bears responsibility for the failure to prevent genocide, the commission of genocide, and the failure to punish genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip." This Council has already failed twice in preventing genocide. Today, it appears we are on the verge of witnessing a third failure. And at this moment, there can be no ambiguity. Each of us must choose either to act to stop the genocide or to be counted among those who were complicit. Mr. President, Palestine has never been surrendered to empires or invaders. Those who sought to subdue it are remembered only in shame. Palestine is for the Palestinian, and Algeria, as President Abdelmajid Tebboune has vowed, will never abandon them. Not until the establishment of Palestinian state with Al-Quds Sharif as its capital. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this 10,000th meeting of the Security Council, we are reminded of the immense responsibility and the solemn promise carried by this body. 10,000 times the world has looked into this chamber for a leadership, for conscience, and for a hope. Today, as we confront the tragedy unfolding in Gaza, that responsibility weighs heavier than ever. We have voted in favor of this draft resolution today because the situation in Gaza is urgent and needs an immediate attention. As we speak, the IDF military operation is expanding rapidly. An unprecedented famine, humanitarian catastrophe, and unfolding before our own eyes by the hour, compounding the suffering of civilians, mainly women and children. The world looks to this Council for action. Yet today, we have failed to adopt a resolution safeguarding the basic rights of Gaza's people. This is not just a procedural lapse, but a profound moral failing. The draft E10 resolution is grounded in the very language and the spirit of United Nations Charter, reaffirming the principles we have all pledged to uphold. It called for what should be a foundational minimum, namely an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages, the unembedded flow of humanitarian aid, and respect for the international law by all parties. And yet, time and again, this Council has been blocked from action, invoking sometimes explicit more often unspoken, of dangerous language and dangerous logic, that the suffering of some is more tolerable than the suffering of others, and that the lives of certain people matter less. It's a notion that has stained our history before, and it's one we must reject utterly. The moment we begin to measure the worth of human life by nationality, ethnicity, or circumstances, we lose the very foundation upon which this institution was built. The world is not watching. Every delay, every evocation signals to those under siege that their pain is negotiable, their rights conditional, their lives expendable. We cannot allow the logic of lesser lives to take root here in this United Nations Security Council. If we do, we not only fail the people of Gaza, we fail ourselves and the ideals of the founding values of United Nations and the overwhelming consensus of the international community. I thank all members who voted in favor of the resolution. Your support is a beacon of hope and reaffirmation of our shared commitment to peace and human dignity. To my colleagues in the E10, our work is far from over. We remain steadfast in our mission to end Palestinian suffering and advance just and lasting peace in the Middle East. There is no doubt that the foundation of peace in the Middle East is to address the root causes of this ongoing crisis and the underlies in the occupation itself, now in its 5th decade. Somalia reaffirms its steadfast support for the Palestinian people and their legitimate right for self-determination, and the return and establishment of independent, sovereign state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Our delegation reiterates its call for an end to the occupation and an immediate permanent ceasefire, the release of all arbitrary detainees, and urgent resumption of credible and inclusive political process under the international auspices. We recognize and support the ongoing ceasefire efforts led by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, and look toward an upcoming two-state solution conference in the General Assembly next week with hope and determination. We urge all member states to approach that conference with a spirit of responsibility and genuine commitment to just and comprehensive peace in the Middle East. Somalia remains committed to the pursuit of just and lasting peace in accordance with the principles of United Nations Charter to bring to an end to the prolonged suffering of the occupied Palestinian territory and the wider region. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Mr. President, on the eve of the 80th General Assembly session and the high-level week, this 10,000th meeting, what a dark moment in this chamber. Pakistan voted in favor of the draft resolution alongside 13 members of the Council. We commend Denmark for its efforts in coordinating this joint E10 initiative. We align ourselves with the remarks of the permanent representative of Denmark. President, Pakistan profoundly regrets that this Council was unable to adopt a draft resolution tabled by the 10 elected members, a resolution solely aimed at addressing the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Gaza. This was not a routine procedural matter. It was an opportunity to act in the face of unprecedented brutality and devastation and mass displacement in Gaza as the Israeli ground invasion intensifies. But let us be clear, It is not for lack of will or initiative. A clear majority of this Council has consistently demanded urgent action to stop the carnage in Gaza. And we have fulfilled our part of that responsibility. What prevented the Council from acting was the exercise of the veto. That carries a heavy responsibility. And that is where the apology must lie. In moments of such grave human suffering, preventing the Council from fulfilling its mandate risks being seen as enabling the continuation of that suffering. Those who have chosen this course must review their position. The people of Gaza are trapped between relentless bombardment and a suffocating blockade. Children are starving. Hospitals have collapsed. Families have no water, no medicine, no shelter. The occupation army has subjected Gaza City to its most punishing attacks in 2 years of war, sending thousands of residents fleeing under bombs and bullets amid fear that they might never return. This is not a tragedy unfolding in silence. It is happening before the eyes of the world, in plain sight, live on our screens, and the front pages of our newspapers. In that grim setting, today's failure sends a dangerous message that the lives of 2 million besieged Palestinians are deemed expendable and can be subordinated to political considerations. Every hour of obstruction deepens the wound and aggravates the suffering of the people of Gaza. Each failure compounds the cost also for the credibility of this Council. The human toll is staggering. More than 64,000 Palestinians have been killed. Famine has been officially declared in Gaza, with more than 400 deaths already caused by starvation. Infrastructure lies in ruins. Hospitals, schools, water and energy systems have been deliberately targeted and devastated. Aid workers, journalists, no one has been spared, and generations have been wiped out. Families endure unimaginable suffering, and yes, the safety of hostages is being compromised. Their cries may also be drowning out by the roars of the bombs, together with the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And while preventing any moves by this Council, there have been assurances of action on ground, and those assurances have rung hollow, as the situation has only worsened, as we have seen. President, let me repeat, the majority of this Council has acted responsibly. We have fulfilled our duty under the Charter. The shortcomings lie not with the Council as a whole, but with the constraints imposed on it. Several grim realities underscore the urgency of action. First, famine. Already declared in Gaza City, famine threatens to spread across the Strip. Military escalation. Ignoring the calls for a ceasefire and having repeatedly undermined and sabotaged the negotiations, the Israeli onslaught on Gaza City is now claiming dozens of lives daily and could uproot 1 million people. And West Bank annexation plans. The expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank, including the latest E1 plan, exposes the entrenched nature of the occupation and its true intentions, a death knell to the two-state solution. What a stark manifestation of settler colonialism in the 21st century. And we cannot remain oblivious of the fact that all of this is happening with an ongoing case in the ICJ and the unmistakably grave findings of the UN Commission of Inquiry regarding the acts of genocide in Gaza. Mr. President, Pakistan reaffirms its unwavering support for the Palestinian people in their just struggle for self-determination, dignity, and justice. We reiterate the call for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire and an end to all military operations, an immediate, unconditional end to starvation and the inhuman blockade with full unimpeded access through multiple entry and distribution points for humanitarian aid at scale throughout the Gaza Strip, and a just, lasting, and peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question, with the establishment of a sovereign, contiguous Palestinian state on pre-1967 borders, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital, in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and international legitimacy. Pakistan stands resolutely with the majority of this Council, and indeed with the majority of the UN membership, reflecting the expectations of the wider international community. We stand on the side of humanity and with justice and with international law. The world is watching. The cries of children should pierce our hearts. The anguish of mothers should shake our conscience. Palestine looks to this Council, and we cannot turn away. Regardless of circumstances, we will not remain idle. We will continue to act, to speak, and to uphold our responsibilities. This is our duty. To the brave and resilient people of Palestine, waging a just struggle against occupation for their inalienable right to self-determination and freedom. And there is no other choice. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, la France remercie tout d'abord les 10 membres élus du Conseil de sécurité pour ce projet de résolution. La France a voté en faveur de ce texte. Il n'a pas été adopté malgré l'approbation de 14 des 15 membres de ce Conseil. Pourtant, nous faisons tous le même constat, une tragédie absolue qui se déroule sous nos yeux à Gaza. Ce projet de résolution était centré sur les enjeux humanitaires et il réitérait 3 exigences d'égale importance. Première exigence, un cessez-le-feu immédiat, inconditionnel et permanent. La France condamne avec fermeté l'extension et l'intensification de l'offensive israélienne au centre-ville de Gaza. Cette offensive a déjà provoqué le déplacement forcé de 300 000 personnes. Elle induit une aggravation du contexte humanitaire et sanitaire, déjà marqué par la famine et l'absence d'accès aux biens de première nécessité et aux soins d'urgence. La France rappelle en outre son opposition à tout projet d'occupation de la bande de Gaza et de déplacement forcé de sa population. Elle appelle Israël à mettre fin à cette campagne destructrice qui n'a plus de logique militaire et à reprendre au plus vite les négociations en vue d'un cessez-le-feu et de la libération de tous les otages. Deuxième exigence, justement, cette résolution exige la libération de tous les otages, sans délai, sans condition, dans la dignité, pour mettre fin à un martyre que rien ne peut justifier et qui n'a que trop duré. La France condamne une nouvelle fois sans ambiguïté les attaques terroristes du 7 octobre 2023 commises par le Hamas, un Hamas qui doit être désarmé et exclu de la gouvernance de Gaza. 142 États l'ont affirmé, cette exigence avec force, en endossant la déclaration de New York le 12 septembre dernier. Troisième exigence, la nécessité que le gouvernement israélien respecte ses obligations juridiques internationales et lève immédiatement toutes les entraves à l'acheminement de l'aide humanitaire. Les secours d'urgence ne peuvent en aucun cas être instrumentalisés à des fins militaires ou politiques. La réduction d'une population à la famine est un crime. Nous réitérons notre plein soutien aux acteurs humanitaires de l'ONU qui continuent de faire leur travail au péril de leur vie, notre soutien aux agences des Nations unies et à leurs partenaires qui savent distribuer l'aide humanitaire avec neutralité, indépendance, professionnalisme, sécurité, en s'assurant que ce sont bien les femmes, les enfants les plus vulnérables qui recevront cette aide entre leurs mains. Monsieur le Président, le Conseil de sécurité devra aussi, sur la base des paramètres agréés, se consacrer à la mise en œuvre concrète de la solution des deux États. La France coprésidera avec l'Arabie saoudite la conférence pour la mise en œuvre de la solution à deux États le 22 septembre. Cette conférence, portée par la volonté de la grande majorité des États membres de l'ONU, crée une nouvelle dynamique politique et collective inédite qui ouvre la voie à un nouveau chemin de paix et de sécurité pour tous dans la région. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. The UK voted in favour of this resolution today to demand urgent action to address the appalling humanitarian situation in Gaza, to bring the hostages home and end the conflict which has raged for almost 2 years. Since Hamas atrocities of October 7, hostages have been held in unimaginable conditions in Gaza. This Council has been consistent in its demand for the release of the hostages in each of its 4 resolutions, and today's text underlined this demand again. The images of emaciated hostages held in brutal conditions speaks to the brutality of Hamas. They need to allow the ICRC to see the hostages and care for their needs. We reiterate our condemnation of Hamas and its terrorist ideology. Hamas must have no role in the future of Gaza. Last week, the UN General Assembly delivered a resounding message in support of this, with 142 countries voting to condemn Hamas attacks and to demand they disarm and end their rule in Gaza. President, we need a ceasefire more than ever. And yet Israel's reckless expansion of its military operation takes us further away from a deal which could bring the hostages home and end the suffering in Gaza. We are witnessing an entirely man-made famine in Gaza, and images of starving Palestinians killed while desperately seeking scraps of food for their families. And this week, Israel struck Gaza City Children's Hospital. Newborn babies in incubators and children on dialysis should not be under bombardment. We urge Israel's government to end the bloodshed, which has already cost the lives of 65,000 Palestinians, and to immediately lift its restrictions on the entry of aid and allow the UN and humanitarian agencies to save lives. President, the UK thanks the E10 for drafting and consulting on today's resolution. We regret the Council was unable to reach consensus on today's resolution, but we remain committed to the vision of this text. We will continue to do all we can to end this conflict, bring the hostages home, and work with our partners on a pathway to peace, to achieve a secure Israel alongside an independent Palestinian state. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Господин председатель, выражаем признательность непостоянным членам Совета за проявленную инициативу и настойчивость в продвижении проекта резолюции Совета Безопасности с фокусом на гуманитарную ситуацию в секторе Газа. Российская Федерация поддержала данный документ, который содержит ключевые элементы для скорейшего регулирования. Немедленное и безусловное прекращение огня, освобождение всех удерживаемых ХАМАС заложников, снятие жесткой гуманитарной блокады Газа и обеспечение безопасного и беспрепятственного доступа к нуждающимся. К этому мы последовательно призывали с самого начала обострения палестино-израильского конфликта 7 октября 2023 года, и, как показали результаты сегодняшнего голосования, это та основа разрешения кризиса вокруг Газа, под которой сегодня готова подписаться подавляющая часть международного сообщества. К сожалению, сегодня в ходе 10-тысячного заседания СБ мы стали свидетелями очередного 7-го по счету вето США, вновь заблокировавших принятие решения, которое помогло бы остановить кровопролитие. В этих цифрах есть трагический символизм. Пока в Вашингтоне не изменится призма восприятия кризиса в Газе, пока многосторонняя дипломатия в ООН будет восприниматься там как преграда, а не как критически важный инструмент, никаких прорывов по БВУ не произойдет. СБ ООН так и будет оставаться свидетелем катастрофы, парализованной не какими-то своими структурными проблемами, а по воле, точнее из-за ее отсутствия, одной единственной делегации. Призываем наших американских коллег осознать, что декларируемая ими тихая дипломатия на земле, как они говорят, подрывается не здравыми голосами мирового сообщества, в том числе в этих стенах, а конкретными действиями израильского союзника, что наглядно подтвердила агрессивная вылазка Западного Иерусалима против суверенного Катара как одного из основных посредников в переговорном процессе. Это был удар, по сути, по самой идее достижения договоренностей. Он обесценил любые утверждения о том, что Израиль готов к дипломатии и сделкам. Теперь обвинять в их срыве ХАМАС, как это продолжают делать американские коллеги, просто абсурдно. На фоне этих вопиющих действий Израиля против Катара и запуска им операции по полному захвату города Газы, чреватой дальнейшими жертвами среди мирных палестинцев, бездействие со стороны СБ особенно резко контрастирует с требованием обеспечить справедливость, которая звучит на улицах многих мировых столиц, включая Нью-Йорк, где простые горожане выходят на протесты против продолжения конфликта в секторе. Этот призыв должен быть услышан. Важное значение на этом фоне имеет возобновление на следующей неделе в Нью-Йорке международной конференции высокого уровня по ближневосточному регулированию. Мы рассчитываем, что ее итоги будут носить практический и конструктивный характер и позволят вдохнуть новую жизнь в формулу двух государств для двух народов, альтернативы которой не было и нет. Призываем Соединенные Штаты и Израиль подключиться к этому процессу, а не поворачиваться, как ранее, спиной к международному сообществу и мешать его усилиям найти решение для крайне болезненного регионального кризиса. В этом же ряду возмутительные попытки США использовать визовой рычаг для продавливания собственных политических интересов. Призываем Вашингтон пересмотреть свое решение об отказе в выдаче виз членам палестинской делегации на неделе высокого уровня Генассамблеи. Уважаемые коллеги, даже если сегодняшняя попытка провалилась, это не значит, что мы должны опустить руки. Мы готовы действовать и будем доносить свою последовательную позицию на этот счет столько, сколько потребуется. Надеемся, что остальные здравомыслящие члены Совета Безопасности настроены так же. Ведь без справедливого и долгосрочного решения палестинской проблемы и обеспечения законных прав палестинцев невозможно достичь прочного урегулирования палестино-израильского конфликта, подлинного мира и стабильности на Ближнем Востоке. Рассчитываем, что таковых здравомыслящих в конечном итоге будет 15, а не 15 минус 1. Благодарю вас.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente. Panamá desea expresar su reconocimiento a los miembros electos del Consejo por el esfuerzo colectivo y la unidad, pese a las diferencias en la elaboración de este texto. Reconocemos la labor de Dinamarca al coordinar este complejo proceso de negociación entre los miembros del Consejo. Agradecemos igualmente a todas las delegaciones que respaldaron este proyecto de resolución que clama un llamado urgente a la humanidad, a los principios de la Carta y a la defensa de la dignidad humana. Panamá respaldó el proyecto, cuyo propósito no era provocar un veto, porque contenía lo esencial y lo impostergable: detener la matanza de civiles mediante un alto al fuego inmediato y sostenido en Gaza, que además facilitaría el flujo efectivo de la asistencia humanitaria; garantizar la liberación inmediata, digna e incondicional de todos los rehenes; levantar las restricciones de acceso a la vital ayuda humanitaria a Gaza, que con o sin intención convierten el hambre en un método de opresión y control; y restablecer los servicios básicos que mantendrían con vida a una población al borde del colapso. Sin embargo, desafortunadamente, una vez más, este Consejo ha quedado paralizado, y no porque falten propuestas o marcos de acción. En junio de 2024, este órgano adoptó la resolución 2735, que delineó con claridad un plan en 3 fases: un cese inmediato de hostilidades, liberación progresiva de rehenes, retiro de fuerzas y un programa de reconstrucción para Gaza. En enero de 2025, Israel y Hamás acordaron un alto al fuego que siguió en gran medida lo estipulado en esa resolución 2735. Ello demuestra que las resoluciones e iniciativas de este Consejo no socavan los esfuerzos adicionales de mediación, sino que sirven de referencia y guía para alcanzarlos. La experiencia de la tregua temporal, aunque frágil, demostró de manera contundente que era posible detener el sufrimiento humano, permitir la entrega de asistencia de manera efectiva en Gaza y avanzar en la liberación de rehenes. Su ruptura en marzo fue la consecuencia de la falta de confianza y voluntad política para sostener la paz. Desde entonces, ningún esfuerzo de negociación ha logrado restaurarlo. Hoy, 6 meses después de la ruptura del alto al fuego, el 18 de marzo, han muerto aproximadamente 13.800 palestinos más en Gaza. Además, desde el último veto en este Consejo sobre la situación en Gaza, el pasado 4 de junio, han pasado 106 días. En ese lapso, alrededor de 6.800 personas han perdido la vida en Gaza, es decir, en promedio 64 personas cada día, 3 cada hora. La clasificación integrada de la seguridad alimentaria en fases, IPC, ha declarado la hambruna en Gaza. Más de 425 personas, incluidos 125 niños, han muerto de hambre, víctimas no de la escasez, sino de los obstáculos impuestos al acceso de alimentos y medicinas. También los rehenes y sus familias han pagado un precio insoportable, atrapados en una espera que prolonga el sufrimiento y la incertidumbre desde aquel atroz y cruel 7 de octubre. El futuro de los rehenes se presenta cada día más oscuro y sometido a mayores peligros. Las Naciones Unidas y su personal humanitario tampoco han sido una excepción. En los últimos 5 días, 10 de sus edificios en Gaza, incluidas escuelas y clínicas donde se refugiaban miles de desplazados, han sido atacados. Y junto a ellos, los periodistas que documentan la tragedia también han sido asesinados en números sin precedentes, en un intento de silenciar la verdad y oscurecer la realidad de lo que ocurre en Gaza. Hoy celebramos la reunión número 10.000 del Consejo de Seguridad. Un hecho notorio que en esta sesión debería servir como símbolo de moralidad y responsabilidad de un órgano capaz de actuar y proteger a la humanidad. En cambio, la sesión queda marcada por el contraste más doloroso. Mientras este Consejo acumula sesiones, la humanidad acumula muerte y destrucción. La mediación impulsada por Qatar, Egipto y Estados Unidos, que debería ser una oportunidad esperanzadora para el diálogo y el consenso ante el distanciamiento extremo entre las partes, se ha visto cada vez más debilitada por el escepticismo y la lógica implacable de la violencia. Como golpe adicional a esa esperanza, uno de los mediadores, Qatar, fue atacado hace apenas una semana, socavándose aún más la diplomacia y reforzándose la espiral de violencia. Señor presidente, si este Consejo, a través de las resoluciones adoptadas, ya definió un camino efectivo hacia la paz y ese camino ha sido abandonado, debemos preguntarnos qué se persigue realmente. Permitir la desaparición de millones de palestinos en Gaza, permitir que los rehenes mueran en el olvido de los túneles, reducidos a daños colaterales, permitir que se normalice el hambre, la devastación y la muerte de niños con los labios resecos y el estómago vacío. La situación actual no es sostenible, no es salida ni es solución. La devastación y la semilla de odio sembrada no traerá seguridad ni paz, ni la inacción de este Consejo logrará un futuro de dignidad y humanidad para israelíes y palestinos. Panamá pide lo que este Consejo debería ser capaz de exigir, en una sola voz y en cumplimiento de la responsabilidad primordial que la Carta de las Naciones Unidas le confiere para el mantenimiento de la paz y la seguridad internacionales. Un alto al fuego inmediato y sostenido, el acceso irrestricto de la ayuda humanitaria y la liberación de todos los rehenes, así como el inicio de un proceso político serio que devuelva a las partes al camino de la reconciliación y la paz. Muchas gracias.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Mr. President, on December 9, 1947, at its 222nd meeting, the United Nations Security Council held its first meeting on Palestine. Today, so many years later, at this 10,000th meeting of the Council, 14 member states of the Council decided to definitively respond to the confirmation of famine in Gaza and to reiterate our demand for a ceasefire and for the release of all hostages held in Gaza. Guyana therefore deeply regrets the use of the veto today, which scuttled these efforts. An effort of the elected 10 members of this Council, deeply conscious of the horrific situation in Gaza and our responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, we employed a consultative manner in the development of this resolution, with the involvement of all member states of this Council at every stage. It is on this note I extend my deepest appreciation to Ambassador Christina Larsen and the delegation of Denmark for their tireless efforts in piloting us through the drafting process towards the tabling of the draft resolution today. Mr. President, dear colleagues, the question consuming many in the international community, including many of us around this table, is what will it take to achieve consensus for the Security Council to act as one and exercise its responsibility to protect the Palestinian people? In the nearly 2 years of Israel's active military operations in Gaza, the breadth of the atrocities unleashed on the Palestinian people defies every tenet of decency, morality, and humanity. More importantly, international law, the very fabric of the international system that we built from the ruins of World War II, continues to be violated every single day, in defiance of every warning, every legal ruling, every appeal to the perpetrator of these atrocities. And all of this, Mr. President, is done with total impunity. Mr. President, the result of this impunity is the ongoing commission of genocide. Yes, genocide, the words that many did not want to use and hope we'd never have to use it. It's confirmed this week by the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the OPT and Israel. Impunity has also resulted in the weaponization of starvation to the point of creating a famine in Gaza, while Israel continues to impose restrictions on the delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Displacement, destruction, disease, death, these are the squalid fruits that impunity is bearing in Gaza. And yesterday, another cycle of annexation continues to take root as the occupying power began its ground operations in Gaza City, following weeks of strikes on high-rise buildings in the city. At the least, my delegation had hoped that there will be political will on the part of each member of the Security Council to coalesce around the core concerns addressed by the draft resolution. 1, securing a ceasefire as the basis for sustainable improvement in the humanitarian situation, including the reversal of famine, and 2, securing the release of hostages. It is difficult, Mr. President, to raise any credible argument against Council action on these concerns, as they fall squarely within the purview of the Council's mandate for the maintenance of international peace and security. More than that, it is the decent, moral, and human thing to do. The international community has rightly looked to the Council to defend and protect the right of the Palestinian people to be free from Israel's tyranny. But again, owing to the continued exercise of the veto prerogative, this Council is constrained. Mr. President, Guyana wants this war on Palestine to end permanently, comprehensively, and justly. And we will continue to partner to this end with those who have a role in making this goal a reality. The Security Council is pivotal to this end, and Guyana urges that we keep sounding the alarm bells on Palestine and advocating for the Palestinian people until they are free. The Council has the tools to bring about decisive changes in the situation in Gaza and to prevent further escalations in the region, and we should utilize them. Sadly, once again, we could not do so today despite the political will of 14 of the 15 member states. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sierra Leone thanks Denmark for coordinating the process that culminated in the 10 elected members of the Security Council tabling a draft resolution. Regrettably, it was not adopted owing to the non-concurring vote of a permanent member. The initiative of the E10 arose from the grave urgency to address the devastating humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, compounded by the continued captivity of the hostages held by Hamas for over 700 days. Sierra Leone voted in favor of the draft resolution out of our conviction that as Council members, we bear a charter responsibility to rescue civilians from the scourge of war, marked by immense suffering, hunger, insecurity, and continuous loss of life. The draft resolution was clear. It demanded an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire respected by all parties, the immediate and dignified release of all hostages held in violation of international humanitarian law, and full and unimpeded humanitarian access at scale so that food, water, medicine, and fuel reach those in desperate need. Had the resolution been adopted in this historic 10,000 meeting of the Council, it would have fulfilled the Council's most urgent duty to halt the unconscionable suffering of civilians, especially children, who have borne the brunt of this war. We recall with sorrow the August briefing by Ms. Inga Ashen, CEO of Save the Children International, whose testimony of famine and malnutrition, each on the frail bodies of children, must stir our collective conscience. In Gaza today, children face hunger and disease instead of classrooms and playgrounds. Sierra Leone is gravely concerned by the continuation of the conflict, and it deepens with despair. The immediate ceasefire that would have demanded, that have been demanded, could have supported the resumed two-state solution conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia. Only a just and lasting political solution can end this cycle of violence and deliver security for both Palestinians and Israelis. Mr. President, we regret that the non-adoption of this largely humanitarian resolution leaves unaddressed the urgent demand for Israel to lift all restrictions on humanitarian aid into Gaza, following confirmation of famine in Gaza governorate and its spread to other areas in recent weeks. The draft resolution also demanded an immediate ceasefire and the unconditional release of all hostages, imperatives particularly in light of the findings of the Human Rights Council Commission of Inquiry, which concluded that acts committed in Gaza by Israeli forces constitute crimes against humanity, war crimes, and underlying acts of genocide. Under the Genocide Convention, no state may turn away. The duty to prevent genocide is binding on all, and failure to act would make this Council complicit in one of the gravest crimes known to humanity. 14 members of the Council acted. This Council and the international community cannot avert their gaze when children are starved, schools destroyed, and civilians massacred. Again today, 14 of its members acted, and not for the first time. Constrained by the veto, we must continue to act to end the genocide in Gaza. Human dignity demands it. International law requires it. The International Court of Justice has clarified that under the Genocide Convention, states not only have a duty to punish genocide after it occurs, but an active duty to prevent it when there is a serious risk. The alarm was raised. This obligation requires due diligence once a state knows or should know that genocide is at risk. It must use all reasonably available means, diplomatic, political, economic or otherwise lawful, to stop it. The court in the Bosnia versus Serbia found that failure to act, despite influence over those who carried out the Srebrenica genocide, breached their obligation. This duty is owed erga omnes to the international community as a whole. The court has further underlined that complicity in genocide is prohibited. A state cannot lawfully provide aid, cover, or assistance to the perpetrators if it knows genocide is being or about to be committed. In its provisional measures in South Africa versus Israel, the ICJ reaffirmed these principles, ordering Israel to refrain from acts that could constitute genocide, to prevent and punish incitement, and to allow humanitarian relief into Gaza to avoid conditions that could destroy a protected group, the Palestinian people. These rulings remind us that there can be no neutrality or silence in the face of genocide. Mr. President, to close, let us be clear. Unlike Pontius Pilate, states cannot wash their hands of their responsibility. The blood of innocent children cries out for justice. The Council, although constrained by the veto, and the international community must not remain indifferent. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We regret the use of the veto, which prevented the Security Council to take action today. This resolution was short and simple, despite the multi-layered catastrophe unfolding in Gaza. Last month, the IPC confirmed that famine has taken parts of Gaza and is threatening to spread across the Strip. In the last few weeks, Israel has started its deadly offensive in Gaza City. This week, the Commission of Inquiry presented its report. Almost 2 years into this conflict, we are still shocked by new milestones and heartbroken by lives lost. Some tragedies which we can no longer even bear witness to when Gaza is cut off from the world. Mr. President, we have said before that our delegation does not believe it is our job to be briefers on the facts on the ground. Neither is our job to be judges and provide legal clarity. For that, we have existing mechanisms which enjoy Slovenia's full support. Our job, however, is to listen to every single devastating briefing in this chamber. And our job is to act in keeping our promise of never again. It was not the intention of the elected members to negotiate long texts. That does not mean we did not negotiate in good faith. Our intention was to say that red lines have been crossed, that people cannot be starved, that people cannot be forcibly displaced, that the destruction of lives, of property, and of any chance of a ceasefire cannot continue, that civilians cannot be held as a bargaining chip, that people need peace, that hostages need to be released, that both Israelis and Palestinians deserve the resumption of a political process for a vision of two states to become reality. Mr. President, despite the inaction witnessed today and over the past 23 months, it is our firm belief that efforts by members of this Council will not be in vain. They are a measuring stick for an accountability process that will take place. And today, even when our hands are tied, we demonstrated that we stand against the immense suffering experienced by so many in Gaza. Our efforts today show that the vast majority of this Council and the international community believe that real diplomacy must remain one of dialogue and respect for international law, in Gaza and in wars elsewhere. It is a diplomacy of active choice for peace in the face of new historical responsibilities, a diplomacy of action against the unending and needless deaths of children, mothers, and so many others in Gaza, and a diplomacy of hope that durable peace is within reach in spite of the devastating reality before us. Let me conclude by thanking Denmark for their condemnation of the group of elected members on this initiative, and in particular fellow E10 members for their unity, moral clarity, and determination. As members entrusted by the General Assembly with this responsibility, we stood united for an end to this catastrophe. And by extension, we hope we have clearly showed that the world stands united against the suffering of the people of Gaza. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
主席，中方对今天的表决结果感到非常失望。加沙冲突延宕已近2年，造成前所未有的人道灾难。安理会一次次试图做出努力，却一次次被美国强行阻拦。我们不禁要问：到底还要有多少无辜生命逝去，加沙才能实现停火？2023年10月，美国第一次否决加沙问题决议时，冲突导致近3000人丧生。今天，美国再次滥用否决权，加沙死亡人数已飙升至6.5万多人。武力打不出和平，暴力换不来安全，延长战事只会造成更多的死亡和仇恨。以色列必须立即停止在加沙的军事行动，停止任何加剧局势紧张的危险举动。我们希望美国同国际社会相向而行，秉持公正、负责任的立场，切实为实现停火做出积极努力。到底还要发生多少惨剧，人道物资才能畅通无阻？在极端封锁下，加沙已经出现饥荒，疾病迅速传播。美国、以色列推行军事化物资分配机制， 阻碍联合国等人道机构开展援助，未能改善人道局势，反而造成大量寻找物资的平民死亡。人道物资武器化不可接受，违反国际人道法不可接受。以色列必须履行占领方的国际人道法义务，解除人道物资准入限制，支持联合国以符合人道主义原则的方式开展援助。到底还要等到什么时候，安理会才能履行职责？安理会承担着维护国际和平与安全的首要责任，早已就加沙停火、人道等问题达成压倒性的共识。但正是美国对安理会行动的消极阻拦，对违反安理会决议行为的顽固袒护，导致安理会在加沙问题上应对乏力。美国作为安理会常任理事国，应当正视自身责任，支持安理会有效履职，维护联合国作用和权威，而不是相反。主席，国际社会维护公道正义的努力不会停止。下周第80届联大将举行一般性辩论和落实两国方案高级别会议。我们希望有关国家倾听国际社会的强烈呼声，做出对生命负责、对历史负责的正确决定。中方将继续同国际社会共同努力，推动平息加沙战火，缓解人道灾难，落实两国方案，最终实现巴勒斯坦问题的全面、公正和持久解决。谢谢主席。
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your swiftly scheduling today's vote on a draft resolution presented by the elected members, which comes at a most critical juncture, driven by the most dire humanitarian situation of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. The situation in the Strip is worsening by the hour, adding to an already desperate situation, thousands that are forced to leave again their homes amid ongoing hostilities. Food, water, electricity, medicine remain scarce. Essential needs for the human life are being denied to the people of Gaza. Starvation and malnutrition, especially among children, have reached alarming levels. The need to ensure unhindered, safe and sustained access for humanitarian assistance is urgent. At the same time, we do not forget the carnage of the 7th of October. We do not forget the hostages that continue to suffer in the hands of Hamas. Their immediate and unconditional release is imperative, and a ceasefire needed now more than ever remains elusive. This unprecedented situation compels us to raise our voices together. We still believe that diplomacy remains the most effective tool, even in the most difficult circumstances. We urge all parties to assume their responsibilities, return to the negotiation table as soon as possible, and be guided by international law and international humanitarian law to avoid a humanitarian catastrophe. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Denmark voted in favor of this resolution. We did so because we believe that this Council, as the custodian of international peace and security, has the responsibility to act decisively to address the situation in Gaza. We deeply regret that it was not possible today. By voting yes, Denmark voted in favor of responding to the catastrophic humanitarian situation, which has only deteriorated further with the confirmation of famine in Gaza and the expansion of the Israeli military operation in Gaza City. Our yes vote is a message to the starving men, women, and children. You are not forgotten. It's a vote in favor of upholding international law, demanding that the government of Israel immediately and unconditionally lifts all restrictions on the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Trucks with life-saving aid are just waiting to be allowed to enter. Israel must ensure the safe, sustained, and unhindered distribution to the civilian population. Our vote is also a demand for the immediate, unconditional, and dignified release of all the hostages that have been cruelly held by Hamas and other terrorist groups. It's a message to them and their families. Your freedom and your well-being remain key to us. Lastly, our vote is a vote for peace, a peace that will allow this man-made humanitarian catastrophe to be stopped, a vote for the immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire. Mr. President, Denmark has consistently condemned the terrorist attacks by Hamas and other terrorist groups on October 7th. What happened was inexcusable, and we reiterate our firm condemnation of Hamas' despicable acts. We have also consistently underlined that the fight against terrorism cannot come at the expense of the rules that safeguard humanity. In closing, Mr. President, even though this resolution was not adopted today at this 10,000th meeting of the Council, 14 members of this Council have sent a clear message. We want to see an immediate and lasting ceasefire, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and the urgent lifting of all restrictions on humanitarian aid. We'll continue to work for this for however many Council meetings it may take. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Republic of Korea. Almost 2 years have now passed since the horrendous terrorist attacks by Hamas against Israeli citizens, which has sparked Israel's massive military operations in Gaza, killing far too many Palestinians, including scores of women and children. Yet, we now confront another appalling development in Gaza. New, deadly IDF ground operations, forcing hundreds of thousands of exhausted and starved Palestinian civilians out of Gaza City. We strongly oppose these vast land and air attacks. It is deeply troubling that the endless humanitarian suffering of Palestinian civilians in Gaza still persists, while 48 Israeli hostages are still brutally held by Hamas. With the ongoing restrictions on the entry and delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza, along with a total breakdown of law and order, innocent civilians are being starved. The IPC report last month indicating the famine was already happening in Gaza City was yet another wake-up call for this Council. Against this backdrop, the Republic of Korea has participated as one of the elected members of the Council on a new endeavor to pursue an outcome of the Security Council, demanding a ceasefire and the release of hostages, as well as an urgent increase of life-saving assistance based on the proven UN humanitarian system. We believe that the draft resolution tabled today contained important elements to forge meaningful improvement on the ground at this critical moment. Thus, it is deeply, deeply regrettable that the latest efforts by the E10 could not garner the support necessary for its adoption today. Despite this failure, we believe that today's result shows once again the collective voice of the vast majority of the international community. Thus, an immediate ceasefire must be put in place. All hostages must be released, and most urgently, a genuine surge of dignified humanitarian aid at scale, based on long-standing humanitarian principles, must be ensured. All efforts to expand humanitarian aid should be supported. But we clearly witnessed during the ceasefire earlier this year what was the most efficient way to have palpable outcome on the ground. Indeed, the vital work by the UN and its partners must be guaranteed. Aid seekers should be protected, and the fighting must come to a complete halt. On this occasion, we reiterate our firm support for the humanitarian organs of the UN, including OCHA and UNRWA. Civilians in Gaza, as well as hostages and their families, have suffered too much and far too long. The Republic of Korea urges the finalization of a deal to secure an immediate ceasefire and release of all hostages, leading to a permanent end to this war. We do not believe that today's unsuccessful effort is meaningless. Instead, we hope these efforts can help illuminate a path toward a durable peace and stability for all in the region. I resume my function as President of the Council. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. You have the floor.
Because there were several references to a report that was released earlier this week by the so-called Commission of Inquiry, the United States wanted to clarify the record. To be clear, we consider this a slanderous report that lacks any credibility. This report presents lies and distortions to the benefit of Hamas. The commissioners who wrote this report have a record of bias that are in violation of the United Nations' own rules of impartiality. This is a clear example of the Human Rights Council's moral bankruptcy and why the United States ended its participation in this body. It is long overdue that the Commission of Inquiry be eliminated and that its anti-Semitic witch hunt be put to an end.
I thank the representative of the United States for the statement. I now give the floor to the permanent observer of the Observer State of Palestine.
Mr. President, I congratulate the Republic of Korea for its assumption of the Security Council presidency, assured of your wise leadership of these deliberations and the work of this Council. From the outset, I wish to express our thanks to Algeria, to Denmark, Guyana, Pakistan, Panama, Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, and Somalia, the 10 of you, the E10, and Greece, sorry. We thank you for your leadership and relentless efforts for many long months now to push for a permanent and unconditional ceasefire that would end the massacres being perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people, that would release hostages and prisoners, that would end the occupation-imposed famine and unbearable human suffering, and that would stop the forcible displacement of our people and the annexation of Palestinian land. We listened very closely to your passionate statements and your outstanding efforts in order to try to bring this nightmare and this genocide against the Palestinian people to an end. The alternative to all of this, which is demanded by international law and by our collective humanity, is unfolding before our eyes. I can understand the anger and frustration and the huge disappointment of the Palestinian people who might be watching this session of the Security Council, hoping that there is some help is in the pipeline and this nightmare to be brought to an end. I can imagine their anger and frustration that it did not happen. And these atrocities are continuing to be imposed on them. And if any one of you, and I'm sure you do, if you see these images of the total destruction of the city of Gaza, with a flood of tens of thousands of humans navigating through that destruction, you will have no heart if you do not be moved by this amount of pain and anguish that the Palestinian people are going through it. Babies dying of starvation, snipers shooting children in the head, civilians killed en masse, families displaced again and again from ruins to ruins and from death to death, UN personnel and doctors and humanitarians and journalists targeted, devastation and destruction rained down, pulverizing an entire society. And Israeli officials openly mocking all of this and praising the real state value of Gaza. This draft resolution represents the bare minimum that humanity, legality, and morality dictate. It is deeply regrettable and painful that it has been blocked, preventing the Security Council from playing its rightful role in the face of these atrocities and to protect civilians in the face of genocide. It is regrettable that you, the custodians of the maintenance of International Peace and Security Council, were unable to act in that direction, and the minimum is to adopt the resolution that was not adopted. Mr. President, I want to thank all those that supported this draft resolution. In addition to the 10, the 4 others that made it receive 14 votes, almost 15, but 15 minus 1. Many council members were willing to go much further than the language in the text, including by rightfully resorting to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Millions of people in the streets are demanding from you to use Chapter 7 in order to impose your will through whatever tools available to you to force Israel to stop this genocide against the Palestinian people. But the draft was a genuine effort for the Council to speak with one voice. Unfortunately, the Council remains silent at a great cost for its credibility and authority. This demonstrates that when it comes to atrocities, crimes, the use of the veto should simply not be allowed. The United States has been, together with Egypt and Qatar, trying to reach a ceasefire agreement. We supported repeatedly the mediation efforts towards a ceasefire agreement and called repeatedly on Hamas to cooperate with them, even when Israel was sparing no effort to prevent reaching such an agreement. What more proof is needed that Israel does not want a ceasefire agreement that would save Palestinian and Israeli lives? After the Israeli strike on the territory of Qatar, a key mediator, to target those that the mediator was convening to reach such a ceasefire agreement and to end this nightmare. We condemn on the strongest terms this attack against the sisterly country of Qatar. Whether in Gaza or in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem or in the region, Israel has chosen time and time again the path of violence. in response to the global demands for a ceasefire and the global demands for an end to its illegal occupation, it chooses instead to escalate its violence, committing crime upon crime with no end in sight, with full impunity. And children, women, and men, entire families, are paying with their lives for this appalling impunity and inhumanity. Just 2 days ago, the Human Rights Council's Independent Commission of Inquiry joined the many concluding on the basis of the undeniable evidence that this is a genocide, reaffirming the obligation in all states, without exception, to act now to prevent and punish this crime that shames the world, that shames all of us. Mr. President, violence is an impasse. Ceasefire saves lives, Palestinians and Israelis, and hostages and prisoners. There is no justification for killing and harming civilians, whether Palestinians or Israelis. Calling for such violence to end can suffer no conditions, no delays, no excuses. One should not see only partially the suffering of a group of people and completely ignore to acknowledge the mountains of suffering of the Palestinian people. It is the right thing to do. It is the only thing to do. There is no right for Israel to massacre Palestinians. There is no right for Israel to commit genocide. There is no right for Israel to commit ethnic cleansing. There is no right for Israel to starve a people. There is no right for Israel to displace and dispossess a nation. Israel's impunity is fueling its folly. Shielding it is allowing it to persist on a horrific path that will never lead to peace or security or integration. No matter how many tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of soldiers, they cannot erase from the face of earth a nation, the Palestinian nation, nor will they be able to succeed in eradicating tens of thousands, millions of Palestinians. We are here to stay, and there is no power on earth that will negate our existence. So for those who are living in denial and drunk with their ecstasy and victories, wake up. The only road is the road to peace. The only road is the road of the two-state solution, to live next to each other and peace and security. We are committed to that. The whole world is committed to that. There is only one party, led with a group of fanatic leaders who are refusing to accept that, and they are trying, in a futile exercise, to eradicate the existence of the Palestinian people and their national rights, including their right to self-determination, statehood, and the right of the refugees. Israel must be stopped for the sake of our people and for the sake of the Israeli people and for the sake of our region and for the sake of our international community and the international system created to save humanity. A ceasefire must take place. Hostages and prisoners must be released. Aid must flood Gaza, and the UN and humanitarians must be allowed to do their work, save lives. 2 million people must be saved from this hell. The veto prevented this Council from taking action at a time when it is most needed for the maintenance of international peace and security. But that is not the end, and it will not be the end, as many of you said. All states must take their responsibility and take decisive measures that will deter Israel, the occupying power, from pursuing its criminal schemes against our people. They have the tools all of you have the tools in your national capacity and collectively. You have the tools, and these tools must be used. Use them, including through an international protection force and immediate tangible accountability measures. We recognize and thank all those who have been taking bold decisions to end the horrors, to end this illegal occupation. The General Assembly demanded a year ago an end of the Israeli occupation by September 2025, following the ICJ advisory opinion deeming this occupation illegal, and to ensure the rights and freedom of the Palestinian people and the independence of the State of Palestine, and to advance real justice and lasting peace. We urge the implementation of those decisions. We appeal to all to uphold their obligations with action to ensure accountability, to end Israelis' impunity, to protect the Palestinian people, to salvage the two-state solution, to salvage the prospects for a just peace and that Israel is trying to destroy every single day. Mr. President, there is a future with no violence, no hatred, no killing, where the forces of peace finally prevail, and we are getting stronger, the forces of peace. Not only the 14 of you in this chamber, but almost the entire membership of the General Assembly. And it is growing with hundreds of millions who are demonstrating in the streets asking for peace and asking for a ceasefire. But accessing that future starts by stopping this madness. In the coming days, leaders gathering here in New York on this 80th anniversary of the United Nations must take individually and collectively the decisions that will save Gaza, save Palestine, save peace, save the Middle East, and save our international law-based order. Palestine will be present, whether physically or through other measures. Tomorrow, in the General Assembly, we expect an overwhelming voting on the resolution that demands that Palestine to be present. We prefer that our leaders to be present physically, just to come peacefully, to express the position of the Palestinian people like all of your leaders do. But whether we are physically there, meaning our leaders, or that whether they will participate in other methods, Palestine will be there. It will be the biggest elephant in New York City. This General Assembly will be the General Assembly of the question of Palestine. Action can no longer be delayed. There is far too much at stake. Gaza is the ultimate test, and two Palestinian people for 2 years now have paid the price of our failure to stop the killing machine launched against them. We cannot fail them any longer. We have to act. We have to act now, and we are confident that the army of those who will be joining the action march will get bigger and bigger. Palestine will not be the exception to the rule. As humanity succeeded in putting an end to apartheid, humanity will succeed in putting an end to this illegal occupation, and Palestine will be free, and the two-state solution will be a reality. Thank you.
I thank the permanent observer with the Observer State of Palestine for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Mr. President, some in this Council treat these sessions as theater, as a show. For Israel, it's not theater. It is our daily reality. Just hours ago, 2 Israelis were murdered at the Allenby crossing on the Israel-Jordan border, when a truck marked for humanitarian aid was turned into a weapon of terror. This is the reality we face. Words spoken here as performance can have deadly consequences on the ground. First, we would like to thank the United States for showing leadership and moral conviction by vetoing this biased resolution. Members of the Council, how did this draft resolution come before us? It began as Algeria's one-sided text. The United States engaged in good faith, seeking to add balance, to acknowledge truth, moral clarity, peace and security. Algeria refused. For weeks, Algeria has run the show, not to seek compromise, but to stall, dragging talks until the stage lights of high-level week were upon us. Great timing. Not to strengthen consensus, but to strip away balance. Step by step, line by line, it worked to weaken the truth. So ask yourselves, why did you yield to Algeria's radical demands, yet refuse to preserve the simple of facts? Let me remind you what Algeria would not allow you to include in this draft resolution. One, that all acts of terrorism are criminal and unjust. That Hamas is a terrorist organization. That Hamas's terrorist attack on October 7th must be condemned. That Hamas must disarm and leave the Gaza Strip. Why were these lines deleted? The answer is simple. Algeria cares more for the show than the truth, more about the credit than making real progress. Too many here are prepared to follow its lead. What we see here is not diplomacy, it is theater. For Algeria, the substance never mattered, only the performance, the timing, the process, the applause. Not the people of Gaza, not their suffering. If you truly care for the people of Gaza, you would condemn Hamas. You would include it in the resolution. Instead, you protect Hamas, reading from their script and casting them in the leading role on the stage you have built in this council. I know many of you as serious diplomats, yet by endorsing a draft resolution that dares to imply Israel is starving the people of Gaza, you echo the propaganda of Hamas. Ask yourselves, is that truly a choice you are prepared to defend? Is that the part you wish to play, reciting their script rather than speaking the truth? Facts are facts. The crossings are open. Humanitarian aid is moving into Gaza through 4 active entry points. Yesterday alone, on Wednesday, September 17th, 226 aid trucks entered Gaza, and 550 Gazans were evacuated for life-saving medical treatment. Since May, more than 13,000 trucks of food, medicine, and essentials have come by land, sea, and air. Starvation is not, and has never been, Israel's policy. Our policy is to fight terror, to fight Hamas, the ones actually starving hostages. A refusal to face facts is not neutrality. It is a choice that strengthens Hamas and prolongs the suffering of both Israelis and Palestinians. What we see again is a carefully staged performance crafted for headlines, not for peace. Even in its one-sided resolution last Friday, the General Assembly called for Hamas to, and I quote, end its rule in Gaza. The General Assembly, at the very least, condemned, and I quote again, the attacks committed by Hamas against civilians on the 7th of October. Yet, this draft resolution before the Security Council could not even do that. Usually the opposite, you know. Make no mistake, Hamas waits in the wings, the only beneficiary of this stage drama. This draft text delivers them the standing ovation they so crave as reward for their barbarism and murder. In this chamber, Algeria has acted as Hamas's puppet. While Algeria plays theater, our hostages remain underground, starved, tortured, humiliated. Where this resolution was stripped of truth and courage, Hamas stole aid and prepared new attacks. While Ambassador Amar Benjam chases applause, Israelis and Palestinians pay the price. The result is a draft text before us, a resolution that fails to label Hamas as a terrorist organization, fails to condemn the October 7th massacre, fails to demand Hamas disarm and end its rule in Gaza. This is not the product of diplomacy. It is the product of obstruction. It is not the work of mediators. It is the work of a ringleader for radicals and terrorists. Too often, in the past 2 years, the world's moral compass has spun off course. Instead of unified outrage at innocent people dragged into tunnels, we hear hesitation and excuses, or worse, silence. Israel has even been asked to justify what needs no justification, bringing our hostages home and confronting Hamas to prove that there is no immunity for terrorists. Israel did not want this war. Israel did not ask for it. When Hamas invaded Israel, attacked our towns, killed our people, and took hostages underground, war was forced upon us. This Council has a choice. You can continue with the absence of moral clarity, or you can act with purpose. You can steer this organization back to its true north, toward truth, justice, and peace. Political maneuvering and empty gestures lead only to irrelevance. Hypocrisy and one-sidedness will never deliver peace. Members, this is a crucial moment. This year, we mark 80 years since the UN was created, an institution born after evil was defeated in a long and costly war. The triumph of light over darkness made its creation possible. But before the axis of evil was overcome, some chose to face tyranny with appeasement, while others stood firmly. While Prime Minister Chamberlain told his people to go home and sleep quietly as tyranny marched forward, Churchill's path was different, the path of courage and moral clarity. Churchill confronted tyranny and overcame it, and so will we. For as Churchill warned, tyranny is our foe, in whatever trappings or disguise it wears, in whatever language it speaks, from within or without. We must be vigilant, resolute, and united. Israel will not be told to go home and sleep while terror stands at our door. We will not rest until every hostage is home and until Hamas is defeated. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. The representative of Algeria has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Merci, Président. J'ai beaucoup hésité avant de prendre la parole, mais on a cité mon pays à 5 reprises et je ne pouvais pas ne pas répondre. Vous avez tous vu, vous avez tous entendu que le représentant d'Israël a délibérément visé mon pays, et mon pays seulement, au sujet de ce document, de ce projet de résolution, pourtant parrainé par les 10 membres élus de ce Conseil de sécurité, pourtant voté par 14 membres sur 15 de ce Conseil de sécurité, représentant l'immense majorité de l'humanité. Pour ceux qui connaissent l'Algérie, nous ne serons pas intimidés. La semaine dernière, une autre tentative d'intimidation a visé notre collègue du Pakistan. Sans succès. Je voudrais être très clair que, en travaillant avec nos collègues, membres élus au sein de ce Conseil, nous n'avons voulu, et notre seul objectif a été de soulager la souffrance du peuple palestinien à Gaza. Une souffrance indicible. Des bombardements de civils. L'imposition de restrictions pour l'aide humanitaire. La famine. Et enfin, le génocide. Et notre sentiment à tous est un sentiment de révolte contre ce qui se fait actuellement à Gaza, y compris aujourd'hui. Monsieur le Président, comme l'a dit et répété le président Abdelmajid Tebboune, l'Algérie se tiendra aux côtés du peuple palestinien jusqu'à ce qu'il puisse bénéficier de leur droit à l'autodétermination, jusqu'à ce qu'ils puissent jouir de leur droit inaliénable à l'établissement d'un État indépendant, avec Al-Quds Sharif comme capitale. Tout le reste n'est que tentative de brouiller les pistes et d'échapper aux condamnations unanimes de la communauté internationale. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. The representative of Denmark has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
I take the floor to respond to the comments made by the representative of Israel. This resolution was drafted by the E10, coordinated by Denmark as the E10 coordinator. With all due respect, we do not recognize the process that was described here. One specific elected member was mentioned, but all 10 of us stand behind this text, which met 14 votes in favor and 1 veto. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. The representative of Israel has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. To my distinguished colleague from Algeria, you mentioned that I mentioned Algeria 5 times. You're probably right. But when I listened to your speech, you haven't mentioned the hostages even once. The 48 hostages were in captivity. And you are not willing to condemn Hamas. So from what I know, it was the involvement of Algeria. Maybe they were able to convince you all that Hamas should not be condemned in this resolution. And it's a legitimate process. But I think it's wrong. I think it's shameful that you can blame Israel for everything you believe it's true, but a simple condemnation of Hamas you cannot include in a draft resolution. I think it's shameful, and I think it speaks for itself that the resolution is not condemning Hamas. And there will be a future for Gaza only when Hamas will be out of the equation. And if the General Assembly was able to adapt such a language, I think the Security Council should do the same.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. The representative of Algeria has asked for the floor to make a further statement. You have the floor, sir.
Merci, Président. Je serai bref. L'Algérie a parrainé le projet de résolution qui était devant nous et qui, de manière très claire, appelle à la libération inconditionnelle des otages. Puis-je rappeler que mon pays, aujourd'hui, a voté en faveur de cette résolution. Mais puis-je rappeler aussi aux représentants d'Israël qu'il y a 2 jours, que plutôt vendredi dernier, son pays a voté contre une résolution à l'Assemblée générale qui contenait de manière très explicite la condamnation de la prise d'otages par Hamas. Je répète, le monde, l'humanité tout entière est contre les massacres opérés par Israël dans la bande de Gaza. Et je ne me laisserai pas entraîner dans un débat qui vise à occulter l'attention de l'humanité entière sur le génocide, je répète, le génocide qui est en train de se réaliser à Gaza. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of the speakers. The meeting is adjourned.